Morning, it's Monday, January 26, 2015. This is your morning edition on I-24 News. Coming up later today, violence breaks out in Cairo as Egypt marks the 4th anniversary of its Arab Spring uprising. Greece elections results may spell disaster for the European Union. And later on the show, China is in the running to host the 2022 Winter Olympics. We'll take a very, very early look. Good morning, I'm Yael Levi. We begin with Middle Eastern news. 13 people are dead in Egypt in clashes that broke out between police and Islamists yesterday as the country marked the 4-year anniversary of the Arab Spring revolt that saw President Hosni Mubarak ousted from office. Official celebrations to mark the date were canceled due to the death of Saudi Arabia's King Abdullah, but protests proceeded nonetheless. Now, the anniversary is a test of whether Islamists and liberal activists facing one of Egypt's toughest crackdowns have the resolve to challenge the U.S.-backed government once again. Security forces have been stamping out dissent in Egypt since then Army Chief Abdel Fattah al-Sisi ousted elected President Mohamed Morsi of the Muslim Brotherhood in July 2013 after mass protests against his rule. To take a closer look at Egypt on this faithful Arab Spring, or rather autumn anniversary, we're joined in studio by Zach Gold, visiting fellow at the INSS. Good morning to you.
Good morning. And
who specializes in Egypt and the Sinai Peninsula. But first, let's take a look at the following report that has the details on yesterday's developments.
January 25th, the anniversary of the popular Egyptian uprising that led to the removal of former President Hosni Mubarak from power, a monumental event in the history of the region and perhaps the major turning point of the Arab Spring. Throughout the day, violence broke out at different locations around the country where the anniversary was being marked, with Islamists and anti-government protesters coming out against the current regime. Egyptian security sources reported at least 15 deaths overall in the afternoon. Access to Tahrir Square, the symbolic epicenter of the 2011 protests, was cut off. 4 years after the former president's ouster, the Middle East has changed, but some are surprised at how similar today's Egypt is to that ruled by Mubarak. Others, perhaps not so much.
Demonstrations, which were not banned even under the Mubarak regime, are now banned by law. 70% of those who have been detained were detained because of this law, from all factions.
The political turmoil and violence which followed the removal of Mubarak eventually led to the rise of Egypt's current strongman, President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, who has cracked down on the Muslim Brotherhood and other opposition groups in a manner that has surpassed even Mubarak himself. For Sisi's supporters, stability is worth the price.
We've drawn up a constitution and we've elected a president, and the parliamentary elections are coming up. When these institutions are complete, I can say that Egypt has entered the phase of the Third Republic and that it's approaching a phase of development, reformation, enlightenment, and fixing the disorder that has happened in Egypt.
Al-Sisi himself was in Saudi Arabia over the weekend to mark the death of King Abdullah, who passed away early Friday. The Saudi monarch was himself a reformist who challenged extremist religious authorities in his own country. Some see parallels with the current Egyptian leader.
أمام رجال وعلماء الدين أنت مش ممكن تكون وأنت جواه حاسس بيه مش ممكن وأنت جواه تكون حاسس بيه لازم تخرج منه وتتفرج عليه وتقرب فكر مستنير حقيقي ده أنت محتاجين تتوقفوا بشدة وأنا بقول تاني إحنا محتاجين ثورة دينية.
For now, it appears that the current regime in Egypt has managed to consolidate itself in the face of threats from within. There is no doubt, however, that tensions continue to bubble beneath the surface.
Firstly, joining us on the phone from Cairo is I-24 News contributor Jake Wirtschafter. Jake, good morning to you. I want to start with you. First of all, give us the latest. How is Egypt, Cairo, this morning? You know, is it quiet? How many, and numbers of what happened yesterday and over the weekend?
Well, your report was very extensive, so what can I add to it other than the contrarian point of view, which is that Cairo is quiet. Most people stayed off the streets for the past 2 days. Right. The security authorities and the political leadership here made it very clear that they did not want demonstrations on January 25th, and they made it very clear that there would be harsh actions against any forces that did so. I think if there's any surprise here, it's how sharp the security forces, or maybe not, according to official reports, cracked down on those leftist demonstrators on Saturday.
I want to talk about that a little bit because I think, throughout the world, when we're looking at headlines coming out of Egypt, it's mostly just Muslim Brotherhood supporters are storming the streets. But we tend to forget that it's also other factions. It's people who are actually, I'm putting it mildly, were unhappy with the results of what happened in 2011. Case in point, an activist woman who seemed to have been killed on the first day of the protests over the weekend?
Exactly. So, look, I saw this small group emerging from a side alley in downtown Cairo on Saturday. Shamea is married to the leader of the leftist Popular Alliance. They're a socialist party. They supported the Tahrir January 25th revolution of 4 years ago, and they supported the movement against the Muslim Brotherhood. Right. So this was an economic justice protest, which, but I'll remind your viewers, was supposedly the engine behind the Arab Spring.
The Arab Spring.
It's the lack of job opportunities here in the Arab world and educational opportunities for young people. So, this small group of 20 people goes to Tahrir Square to remember the 800 who were killed, and they were carrying flowers, Yael, towards the square, and this woman is shot by a sniper wearing a mask.
Yeah, and that's...
Now, the prosecutor here says that they're going to investigate this killing, and the Interior Ministry already denies that security forces had anything to do with her death. There was a very large, well-attended, and nonviolent funeral up in Alexandria yesterday, and I think the question here that the Tahrir Square people are asking is what kind of measures are going to be taken against whoever it is that shot Shamaya al-Sabah.
Right. And Jacob, you're staying with us, but I want to turn to you, Zach, and of the INSS. Looking at Egypt, and I think one of the birthplaces, granted Tunisia, but one of the birthplaces of the Arab Spring was Tahrir Square. It was the moment where the world was holding its breath because this great not democracy, but this great change came about. The people brought it. 4 years later, we're looking actually at Sisi, who is just another Mubarak. How did that happen?
Sure. Well, one of the things we need to keep in mind to build on Jacob's report, additionally, is that January 25th is Police Day, a day to commemorate the great work of the Egyptian police. And because of the brutality, because of the way that Egyptian police were able to get away with anything during Mubarak's day, that was part of the reason for the uprising, in addition to bread. Of course, the claim for uprising, the moniker was bread, freedom, social justice. Today, we see a very different situation where those popular protesters, like the leftists, like the Brotherhood, still say bread, freedom, social justice. But most of the Egyptian population, if they didn't always say this, now say bread, stability, security. And that's really what we're seeing, that the current government, led by Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, has been given a lot of free rein to do what is necessary to get the economy back on track. And the local population knows that to get the economy back on track, you need security, you need stability in the streets. So they're willing to accept, for a time being, this amount of frankly, brutality in order to get protesters off the streets, because the protesters block business from happening, block investment.
Supposedly, but I'm wondering out loud, and Jacob, you're still with us from Cairo. It is the love of the army, so to speak, or the police of the Egyptian people that still motivates, the support in Sisi. Are you hearing anything on the streets when something like that happens, a socialist demonstrator not affiliated with the Brotherhood gets killed in a demonstration? Are there any other voices within the Egyptian street that are, concerned about Sisi's use of force? Because this is like Abdel Nasser, this is like Mubarak. Or is there any concern about that use of force, or is the army still the all-omnipotent army/security, all-omnipotent, power that the people love and will take anything that they do?
Well, so as you know, it's a very big country. It's a very big army, and it's a very big police. And the police and the army are not actually the same thing in Egypt, although the army is used on the streets and has come into the streets on occasion. So I think that the street-level view here is somehow that the cops are how do I put it, are more trigger-happy, lighter on the finger than the army. And then there's the question, is Sisi actually in control of the whole deep state? And he may be in control, for instance, of the army. He is in control of the army. Is the president himself in control of the units out on the street of the police forces?
Or, I mean, that's a question that actually I'd like to pose to Zach. Is Sisi in control of the entire state?
No, he's clearly not. But there are a number of different factors within the state itself. People talk about a deep state or a pharaoh at the top. Sisi is not all-powerful, and the government is not all-powerful. More importantly, it's a very, as Jacob said, it's a very large country with a very large bureaucracy. If a police commander or the interior minister gives an order from Cairo, that's not necessarily going to be carried out at every level. Right. And so there's not certainly a command of, if I as a police officer act against orders, I will be held responsible. In fact, we've seen, generally speaking, impunity in police cases. There was recently a case where there are two police officers who were offered bail after evidence suggests that they raped a female detainee. Right. So there is a sense in Egypt, on the Egyptian street, that the police impunity that existed prior to 2011 still exists today. And now I agree with Jacob that the view of the army and the view of the police is different. And one of the things that we saw in February 2011 really, was the army came out to the streets in a way protecting the population from the brutality of the police. And this was a great step for the army. It was a very shrewd move, and the army helped at the time decapitate the state, removing Mubarak. They did the same thing when Mohamed Morsi was out of control. I think this is an interesting thing we see is everyone at the top of Egypt, whether it was Mubarak or whether it was Morsi or whether it's Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, they have a sense of authority that we don't associate with in the West.
No, completely. We don't associate. We will never understand. That's actually a very valid point. Yeah. I mean, and I think that's one of the problems that the West has with the Middle East. Mm-hmm. But I want to go back to the point of when it comes to Sisi and the Muslim Brotherhood. What we're seeing around the world is actually the constant use of this power is needed within Egypt because we need to root out the Brotherhood. Yeah. But Sisi's crackdown has neutralized the Brotherhood, but failed to end an Islamic insurgency in the Sinai, right? I mean, that's the place where it's not successful enough. Yeah. And is that being used as capital to use more force within Egypt? Is my question to you.
That's a good question. First of all, the two are not related. It's not a Brotherhood insurgency in the Sinai.
Is there even anybody left from the Brotherhood? Aren't they all in jail?
Many activists in jail, and this is the interesting thing. We have seen that since Abdel Fattah al-Sisi became president, and especially since following the overthrow of Morsi, the crackdown on the Brotherhood generally, the Brotherhood is unable to organize mass protests anymore. They do protest every week. They get tens of people out. For a movement as allegedly large as the Brotherhood is, to get 50 people out into a neighborhood of Cairo is not a large protest. Right. And they're just not able to mobilize in the same way. But what we are seeing is that likely Brotherhood supporters, there's no, there isn't a lot of direct evidence, but there's a lot of suggestion that Brotherhood supporters are involved in sabotage campaigns. There have been an increasing amount since the fall of attacks on train lines, on buses, on transportation infrastructure. Right. And since Morsi's overthrow, there have been a number of attacks on pylons, on electrical towers, in order to create blackouts. In fact, yesterday, two terrorists were killed when their bomb, two of the casualties of the day they were attempting to bomb a electrical tower, and this has been an ongoing thing. So even though they can't come out in street protests anymore, they still are able to disrupt the country. And this is a deliberate campaign by the anti-coup movement to destabilize Egypt, to show that Egypt is not moving forward, to scare away investors. And it'll be interesting to see if it will work in the long term.
In the long term. Final question to you, Jake Orchafter in Cairo, when we're looking at, at the year ahead and the Muslim Brotherhood, because I think that's the clash of civilizations right there in Egypt. Has the Brotherhood really lost all of its power? I was joking before saying that all of them are in jail, but are you still sensing support for them in the streets? Because usually with the Brotherhood, when you try to lock them up, it just raises more support.
I think there are very few Egyptians who will publicly express support for the Muslim Brotherhood as an organization. There are folks who will say that they like aspects of Mohamed Morsi as a guy. just to add to what Zach's saying, you know, the railways have closed down 11 passenger lines for the rest of the month.
Right.
And to disagree with one thing, I would say this. The deal here is that actually the Brotherhood, together with Hamas in Gaza, is running the insurgency in Sinai. So maybe we should go back to what's happening in North Sinai some other time. But the insurgency and the attacks are not limited to North Sinai, as you guys have pointed out. And to that extent, the state has a lot of permission from the Egyptian street, should be told, to continue to crack down on these extremists.
Jaffa Port chapter in Cairo, thank you for joining us, obviously. And Zach, also from the INSS, thank you very much for being with us today as we move on.
Absolutely.
Moving on to Greece, the results of the snap election in Greece came down just a short while ago, revealing that the radical left party, Syriza, has swept into power, having promised to end years of painful austerity policies. The results put the country on a collision course with the European Union and international creditors, a result that exceeds analysts' expectations. Syriza and its 40-year-old leader, Alexis Tsipras, yes, he's younger than I am, won 149 seats in the 300-seat Greek parliament, just too short of an absolute majority, with most of the votes counted. Prime Minister Antonis Samaras, whose party was reduced around 76 seats, called Tsipras to concede defeat. Syriza will become the first anti-austerity party to take power in Europe, and Tsipras will be Greece's youngest prime minister in 150 years. In the first market reaction to the vote, the euro briefly sank to a new 11-year low against the dollar in early Asian trade. British Prime Minister David Cameron tweeted that it would increase economic uncertainty across Europe, to put it mildly. And to help shed light on the economic implications, we will shortly speak to Tony Grant, who has just returned from Greece. But of course, before that, let's take a look at the following report and then break it down from there.
50% unemployment among young people, a 240 billion euro bailout, and a massive 320 billion euro debt. All those numbers have pushed Greece into one of its most historic elections to date.
People are fed up. They are hungry, literally hungry. I'm 72 years old, and all I have in my pocket is 7 euros.
This snap election was triggered by Parliament's failure last month to elect a successor to the president, but it also is a result of ongoing disappointment from the current administration. Left-wing leader Alexis Tsipras has promised to change all that and bring in a government which will roll back painful austerity measures imposed during the years of economic crisis.
Greek people will regain social cohesion and dignity. And the message is that our common future in Europe is not the future of austerity. Is the future of democracy, solidarity and cooperation.
Tsipras promises a new beginning for Europe, but the 9.8 million Greeks eligible to vote hope a fresh start will begin with their battered economy, which suffers from the second highest public debt in the world. Although gradually emerging from recession last year, thousands of businesses remain closed and wages and pensions have been slashed, leaving many Greeks with cautious optimism.
I voted for someone that I believe will help this country, who I believe will do something for us, the middle class, because I think that those who have been hurt the most have been the middle class.
Tsipras aims at raising the minimum wage, cutting power prices for low-income families and reversing pension and public sector pay cuts. But while his Syriza party is expected to form the biggest group in the 300-seat parliament, it is unclear if he will be able to govern alone or will have to form a coalition with one or more of the smaller parties. After the vote, there are 3 days in which to form a new government with an aim of changing Greece's dire financial status.
So basically, breaking news results coming early this morning, and joining me in studio is, first of all, Tony Grant, our one and only, freshly off the plane from Athens, and also Gila Liber-Golan, President. Good morning to you, President of the Israeli-Greek Chamber of Commerce, who will join our discussion. Tony, I want to start with you because you're freshly, as we said, back from Greece. First of all, how was the election day? And these are incredible results.
Yeah, well, I mean, there was a lot of anticipation in the air. I would even say of kind of like a nervous excitement from what I was observing in Athens.
Looking at the results, so this is, pardon me for using an Italian word, and to our Italian,
Go for it.
Yeah, it's kind of a baffanculo to Europe.
Yeah.
It's really, this is the Greeks coming out and storming the streets saying, we're done. Am I right in saying that?
And storming calmly. I mean, it was people, there was a lot of, big voter turnout. The weather was good, actually, so it was a nice day in between some stormy weather, so a lot of people hitting the polls. But it was pretty calm. A lot of Greeks I spoke to were voicing some trepidation about the market and the future of the Greek economy, just in terms of the swing to the left, but a lot of disappointment with everything that's come up to this point. So there was a sense that they were ready to take the risk to just bring in some new blood.
And what are the headlines this morning when it comes to Greece?
Well, of course, there was an interesting headline echoing what I'm saying from Fortune, which is, of course, talking about the market jitters. Greece's radical left, they're calling it, which now, of course, is going to become, I think, a bit less radical, but win snap election, threatening market unrest. Again, this is a bit of not that they've thrown caution to the wind, but they've kind of thrown caution to the wind. Yeah, and some Greeks were telling me that they're nervous about very recent, about a year ago in Cyprus, when the European Central Bank or fiscal authorities basically took money out of Cypriot's accounts because of the Cypriot economy was basically tanking. Right. And a lot of the Greeks have been spreading their money around in different banks so that it's not all in one place, as sort of a precaution. So that's sort of off the headlines at the moment. But when you see about market jitters, that's domestically.
And as the euro already taking a dip at a certain point there, just as a reaction, we don't know, the day is still young when it comes to the markets. But Gila Liber-Golan, president of the Israeli-Greek Chamber of Commerce. First of all, I mean, when somebody, like the Chamber of Commerce, when people around the world are looking at these election results this morning from Greece, what does that spell for any kind of trade or commerce with Greece?
I wouldn't start my reaction at this point. I would say, first of all, for me, I'm working in Greece for over 10 years as a lawyer. It's part of my life. And I have studied Greek, and I know very, very well the mentality of the people, everyday life. I would say in Greek, "Ina izefteri petriza yamena," which means it's my other country. Okay. So I would say that what is happening today or yesterday, it's an earthquake. It's an earthquake that nobody could believe that suddenly the Greeks will change their mind, because after 40 years, the two parties were changing seats. Yeah. And there were horror movies saying what is going to be when Tsipras, the head of Syriza, the head of the left radical party, will take over, what will happen. And
this is not just a taking over. This is like an absolute sweep.
It's a sweep. It's a sweep. It's a sweep.
Like nobody doesn't want this guy. Everybody wants him. Yeah.
And I have foreseen it 2 weeks ago when he has brought to this move. Actually, if I can just go in 2 words, why we have election in 1 month is they had to vote for a president. And there is a rule in the Greek institution that you bring the nominee, which was only one. He was a good one. For 3 times, he has to get, there are 300 seats, and each time 180, and at the end, 200 and 180. And he was, and if he's not elected, then the parliament dissolves, and election is going to be within a month. So within this, and the election yesterday, it's a month. Yeah. And you go in the street, you see the people, I know the people. People are despair, really despair. And I mean in economy. They have shrank in 25% the economy in Greece. I'm working with people. I'm doing.
But have these austerity measures, and as you mentioned, that people are despaired and austerity is, it's shrinking it down. Did it work? Is Europe saying that, these austerity measures were helping Greece come out of this? I mean, because Greece was on the verge of bankruptcy, right? It still is in many ways now.
In many ways, yeah.
So, I mean, did the austerity measures help? And what is the Syriza party? Suggesting? What will be their move? That's what we're all wondering.
Listen, well, I said, we are we are now 8 o'clock in the morning, that we are not yet know the final. But Mr. Tsipras really said we are going to do this. What he will do, and I expect it, Greece will stay in the EU. What will he do? He will renegotiate about these terms of the austerities. What I said to Tommy before then, that while they were negotiating about this term, Greece was at that time very weak, and they didn't have the power. I think now from the place that the citizens are and what is Tsipras is leading them, they will renegotiate with power. And you have to understand what he's saying. It's very true to understand the core of the mentality of the Greeks. Greece has dignity. And what he's really saying, we are restoring the dignity of the people. They were humiliated. You could see people, they were talking.
Not only that, they were humiliated by the Germans.
Absolutely.
In many ways,
Listen, it has been improved. It's not as it was. It has been improved. But if you talk to everyday person and so forth, still the banks, you cannot take loans very easily. They're afraid. We will have to see. And I think that the EU and the IMF and Germany and the Troika, they are sitting on the bench and they are looking. In very few days, the 19 ministers of finance will gather together to look again. And what Mr. Tsipras said, well, he had to do it because it's the election, and he had to
use this rhetoric.
But he went back, and now, as he's going to be the prime minister, he has responsibility, and he doesn't want to go out of the EU because it's going to be a domino
effect.
But I have to tell you something very interesting. What I've seen is that Spain is really taking power from what Tsipras has done.
And that's the million-dollar question. Sadly, all the time we have. Tony, just your quick prediction. Will they or will they not stay in the EU?
I think they'll stay in the EU, but the Eurozone itself, time will tell.
Time will tell. Brilliant stuff. When we get back, a violent weekend. We're spiraling East Ukraine back into full-on conflict. First, though, let's hear some more of the morning headlines. Welcome back. Good morning to the morning edition of I-24 News, the place you should be on this January.
Well, you know what? Today, Ruti?
26 people.
Thank you.
Yes. January 26th,
yes, now
2015.
we're all up and at 'em.
Tony, you failed.
But
then, you have an excuse because you have just returned back from Greece to give me the headlines I missed while scanning the news, or in reverse.
In reverse. Well, we talked about Greece just a few minutes ago.
By the way, where are my kalamatas?
Well, let's see. Second hour.
Second hour. Yes, nine.
But in this hour,
nice save. Yes, news headlines. Please.
I love this headline from The Guardian because it's of course a left-wing newspaper, and Alex Tsipras is their man. Look at this. Greece shows what can happen when the young revolt against corrupt elites.
Amen.
Yeah, amen to that. Listen, again, that was an aspect that we didn't touch on earlier, but there's been a lot of corruption in Greek politics, like in politics everywhere, you might say. Not in Israel, of course.
Never.
But anyway, yes, so it is kind of a victory in that sense alone of the young, optimistic against the corrupt and entrenched.
Against the old system, against the old school, against things that, many could argue are not going so well worldwide. But I can't help but touching again on the numbers that come out of these elections, which, he swept... What? He nearly got every single vote.
Yeah, I haven't actually seen the numbers, but it's a sweep.
He's got almost a majority in Parliament. He's got 149 out of 300 seats.
So that will be simplify matters in a way.
Yeah, and he's got 38% of the popular vote.
Again,
it's almost like he's like voted to be was voted in to be a dictator. I'm kidding.
Yeah,
but he's got that. 38%.
It's actually the cool thing about it is that it is such a clean sweep that whatever whatever agenda he has, whether it's anti-bailout or what, he'll have time, I think, and a chance to actually try to make it work. He's got the mandate.
He's got the mandate. Yeah, but he's only got 3 days to form a government.
Yeah, well, they'll move pretty fast now. Yeah.
Okay.
The momentum is there.
The momentum is there.
Yeah,
yes.
I saw it. Also, just want to mention something happened yesterday, as Reuters reported Sunday afternoon, that there was a rocket attack on Damascus, which didn't make a tremendous amount of news because we're so used to Syrian civil war.
Yep.
But Damascus has been, largely spared from a lot of the ravages of the Syrian civil war. And what this report is saying is actually the Saudi Arabian-backed Islam army based in the eastern Ghouta region near Damascus that's responsible for those rocket attacks, which killed at least 7 people. It was in retaliation for an attack last week in Ghouta, which more than 40 people were killed. So again, what's happening in Syria is something that is every day we have more of this.
When these strikes reach the capital, reach Damascus, and that's the danger. Because if Damascus falls, and I don't think that is imminent, but the fact that it's in and around Damascus and it's getting closer to the capital, shows not just a fracture, but that Syria in itself, as Syria as a whole, is, not really existent anymore.
So very problematic. We're following that. And, of course, a big, huge story which is related to Argentina. AP had this headline, which is the death of prosecutor that would be Alberto Nisman, shakes faith in Argentina's president and government institutions. President Cristina Fernandez Kirchner is really under the gun, so to speak, because of originally well, she's had this sort of double talk, mixed messages about what actually was the caused the death, or now we're looking at potential murder of Alberto Nisman, who had explosive allegations against the government. Fernandez,
and then was found dead.
A week ago from last Sunday.
Right.
And at the same time, just to recap, he was the one that was alleging a cover-up deal between Argentina and Iran over the 1994 Buenos Aires bombing of a Jewish center. And the journalist who was covering this, Damien Pachter, has actually fled Argentina. As Haaretz reported, he arrived in Israel last night.
I
hate that. I'm putting this picture up because they did.
Yeah, no, we have it in.
He's a bit of a Haaretz correspondent. He's been writing for them for years.
Yeah, he's been writing for them for years, but also, to the point
and
where
he's a dual national.
He's a dual national, and the frightening thing is that he really, to quote him, I felt I was being followed. I was afraid of being shot.
Well, apparently he was tipped off that it might be wise for him to follow that old adage, tell the truth and run. And Clarín here, which is a big Argentine opposition newspaper, had a picture of him, I think, at the airport in Montevideo. He went to Uruguay first. Again, this is, as journalistically speaking, it's horrible that you have to do that.
Exactly.
You're reporting the news and trying to analyze it, and then you have to flee the country. And I think that Kirchner, if nothing else, was remiss for not, stepping up and saying, "Hey, he's a reporter. Leave him alone."
Leave him alone, which makes all the fingers point back at her. Just shows us sort of what the abysmal situation that Argentina is in. And because all this has the making of a Hollywood movie. It feels like we're reading a script.
It does, except I would say, the stakes are arguably higher, because look at the 85, of course, victims of that attack and their families that want, justice. And if there's a cover-up at the highest levels of government, potentially, what does that do for all of them?
Not for all of them, and for
it just obfuscates the truth.
Yes.
Anyway, in crime news. This was a bit of a shocker.
Yes.
Yesterday, at the Home Depot in Chelsea, in Manhattan, 2 dead. Yeah, we said smiling, but 2 dead in a murder-suicide. This was really shocking stuff because, an armed employee actually walked into this very posh Home Depot.
I know that Home Depot.
So do
I.
And fatally shot his manager before killing himself, sending colleagues and shoppers fleeing into 23rd Street. This is the kind of thing that, it happens in the Bronx, it happens in Queens.
It never happens
in Chelsea. And again, the situation with, I'm going to say it, with guns on the loose in the United States, when it happens in a place like this in posh Manhattan,
people
are going to start to pay attention and say,
hey. Curious, why did he kill his boss?
I don't know what the reasons were, but
don't you have that thought?
Don't know the
morning?
details.
No.
Okay.
But again, drama that New York does not need at this time.
True.
But very bad news. And also drama in Iowa. over the weekend, there was a sort of unofficial kickoff to the Republican primary season for 2016. The LA Times, as they call it, presidential flirting in Iowa.
Yes.
Governor Scott Walker, Republican from Wisconsin, gave a great, a very well-received speech talking about going bold, wowing the conservative crowd.
Bold?
No, bold, that's me, actually. No, but going bold.
Yes?
Yeah, so...
Not making light of the Republican rollout? Yes.
No, and there were a lot of interesting Republican statements. We'll get to some more a little bit later in the broadcast.
I'm also tempted. I saw a little bit of that, and I'm so glad you brought it to our attention, because it's like the presidential season has begun. They rolled out the Republicans out in Iowa. Jeb Bush was not there, right?
I don't think Jeb was there, but I think Chris Christie was there, Donald Trump.
Sarah Palin was there.
Yes.
So you're holding off on that one?
I'm holding off on that for a moment.
On that one, okay. Then I'll hold off with you.
Ted Cruz wants to abolish the IRS. I think that's a...
Actually, I would run with that.
I would run with that.
I'd
not
abolish
appealing
the IRS.
to the masses on that one.
Yeah. Tony, stay with us. We're locking you in studio because I need you every time I have Ruthie with me as well. Okay, moving along. Yeah. Recent developments in eastern Ukraine sadly look ready to flare up into a full-blown conflict mode yet again, following a relative lull in violence in recent weeks. On Sunday, world leaders ramped up pressure on Moscow to stop pro-Kremlin rebels from pursuing a major new Ukrainian offensive after rockets killed 30 people in the strategic government-held port city of Mariupol. Scores more were wounded when dozens of long-distance rockets targeted residential and commercial sections of the city. Now, a rebel assault on the city in late August is what sparked Kiev to pursue peace and offer the rebels 3 years of a limited self-rule, a truce that was never really in full effect from the moment it was signed. Joining me in studio, and thank God for that, every morning to discuss the recent developments is I-24 News senior news editor Ruthie Sinai. Ruthie, good morning to you. Let's take a look at the following report with the details and take it and break it down from there.
Ukraine. Where do we go from here? This question is probably in the forefront of the world leaders' minds today, a day after the brutal attack in the eastern city of Mariupol, which killed at least 30 people. The head of the self-proclaimed Donetsk Republic said that the rebels launched an attack on Mariupol to commemorate those who died in the Donetsk bus station last Thursday. Ukrainian President Petro Poroshenko condemned the attack and called for a new peace initiative in the region.
Regime of steady ceasefire, release of Ukrainian hostages who are illegally detained both on temporary occupied territory and on the territory of the Russian Federation, closure of the border, withdrawal of foreign troops and the start of political process of de-escalation and solutions remains our key priority.
US President Barack Obama also expressed his concern about the situation in Ukraine while visiting India Sunday. Obama said his country will continue to isolate Russia and he will examine options short of military confrontation.
The question is going to be whether they continue to pursue a path that not only is bad for the people of Ukraine, but is bad for the people of Russia. And are we able to continue to raise the costs even as we're creating an off-ramp diplomatically that eventually the Kremlin starts pursuing a more sensible policy.
With the new assaults in Mariupol and Donetsk, the death toll in this 9 months conflict now exceeds 5,000. And even as world leaders become deeply involved, tension in the region remains high.
So joining us via Skype live from Russia is Moscow Times reporter Ivan Nechepurenko. Ivan, good morning to you.
Good morning.
Okay. President Obama yesterday, I think it was in New Delhi, came out and said that more measures will be taken against Russia if these assaults continue by pro-Russian separatists in Kiev. But again, anything short of war, and I'm ad-libbing him completely right now. But, I mean, is anybody taking notice of that, in your opinion, in Moscow? And is Putin kind of, and again, I know we're theorizing, somewhat, resolved to try and make parts of the Ukraine Russia's come hell or high water?
Well, I think people do take notice, definitely, but the reaction is the opposite of what people expect to be. The reaction is that Russia is under attack and that we have to stay behind the leader. I'm not talking about myself, I'm talking about the people at large. So,
obviously, and I'm asking you, this is actually a narrative that is selling. And when it's heading to what it's heading right now in Mariupol, because, I mean, I'm asking you out loud, the ceasefire never really lasted, did it?
No.
Okay, and when it comes to, you know, Putin's agenda inside the Ukraine, what is the theory in Moscow? What is he heading for?
I think it's not a theory. He said it many times. He wants Ukraine to be a federalized and neutral state that Russia will have a stake in, a stake that will that will allow Russia to exert political influence on Ukraine in the future. That's what he wants. And I think what we see is that they're not willing to give up this position. They won't compromise on this. Unless this is fulfilled, they'll go as far as it gets.
Yes, Ruthie Sinai.
Good morning. So this war of attrition, which is actually what it is, how is this, in Putin's thinking, how is this going to bring the government in Kiev to give in to this demand of federalization? I agree with you. I think that's where he's going. But how is this going to play out?
Well, it seems that the hope is that Ukraine is going to have some big crisis. It's going to default on its debt. Basically, it's going to be forced to seek some kind of compromise because it's not going to be able to take longer on this war, basically. And I think they just wait for it.
They're basically, you know, chipping at it bit by bit. You're staying with us, Ivan, but I'm wondering with you out loud, Ruthie, because this is a conversation we had off camera. When Obama stands on the stage in New Delhi and says he's threatening more measures against Russia, and I'll be back to you, Ivan, in a second on how that's affecting Russia, that doesn't seem to put a dent into Putin's agenda when it comes to the Ukraine. Well, what can the West do to try and stop this?
Well, I think one of the reasons it's not putting a dent in is that the Europeans aren't entirely on board. I mean, you've got, you know, serious cracks in these sanctions. You've got a lot of European countries, you know, very gung-ho to get back in the game and continue with their trade. And these sanctions, you know, I'm sure they hurt the Russian economy, but I think they hurt a lot of the other economies just as well.
If the Security Council in Europe is meeting this evening to
try... In New York.
Is there a Security Council meeting in New York this evening? Also, when it comes to that, if you said not all the Europeans are on board, that spells to Putin, I can continue.
It does. And also, of course, he's got the veto. I mean, they vetoed an attempted resolution on Saturday. So, you know, one assumes it's going to go the same way today. I don't see any reason why
that it's going to go otherwise. Ivan's asking you right now, when it comes to the sanctions on Russia, any kind of reaction from the people of to that? I mean, other than the narrative, obviously, that most likely is being sold in the papers that, you know, we need to stay strong, it's the world against us. That sounds reminiscent. It's the world against us, et cetera, et cetera. But are people feeling it? Are people feeling the sanctions in Russia?
Well, of course, people feel the sanctions. The ruble has just collapsed. And, of course, people's incomes are going down, real incomes are going down. But the thing is that you have to separate the economic effect of the sanctions and the political effect of the sanctions. And the political effect of the sanctions has so far been the opposite. I think more time has to pass for people to realize who is responsible and all of that. I don't think sanctions have been effective so far in affecting Russia's policy. I think it's been maybe even more aggressive.
More aggressive than doing the reverse effect. Ivan, I'm not going to try and butcher your last name. Ivan, thank you for joining us from Moscow this morning. Ruthie Sinai, always great to have you. Tony, locked in. When we get back, protests over the sale of the new Charlie Hebdo issue hit Israel and the West Bank now. First, though, let's hear some more of the morning headlines. Welcome back. It is still Monday, January 26th. Thank you, Tony. 2015, this is still the morning edition. Last I checked, I'm still Yael Levi. Thank you for staying as the place you should be. Because the next item is an interesting one. Protests against the sale of the new issue of the satirical French magazine Charlie Hebdo, which features a caricature of the Prophet Muhammad on its cover, have erupted across the Arab Muslim world in the past week, most recently in the West Bank. Now, in Israel, the release of the magazine sparked a debate over free speech after the bookstore chain that normally sells it refused to put it on newsstands, only enabling its sale online after an Arab minister of the Knesset warned it would strike Muslim fury. In response, Foreign Minister Avigdor Lieberman said Sunday he had instructed Israel Beitenu, that is his party, and party activists to buy thousands of copies and distribute them to the public, saying Israel refuses to be terrorized into silence. Now, joining me in studio is Israel Beitenu candidate for Knesset, Ashley Perry. Ashley, good morning to you.
Good morning.
And firstly, I believe congratulations are in order, right?
Thank you very much.
Okay, we've known each other for years. We'll touch on that in a second. First, ahead of the elections, let's take a look at the next report from the I-24 news desk about the Charlie Hebdo latest conundrum, so to speak, in the Middle East. Let's take a look.
A bookstore chain has come in for some heavy criticism in Israel. Stematsky, the largest book retailer in the country, stirred controversy following its decision to cancel the sale of Charlie Hebdo. Stematsky has been selling the magazine since 2011, after the Charlie Hebdo office was set on fire in Paris. But today, the chain changed its position. The reason appears to be a letter sent to Benjamin Netanyahu by this Arab-Israeli member of parliament, Masoud Ghanem. He warned the prime minister of unfortunate consequences if Stematsky continued selling the most recent edition of Charlie Hebdo, the so-called survivors issue, printed as a response to the massacre which left 12 of its staff dead.
The cartoon appearing on the cover of the last Charlie Hebdo edition hurts every Muslim. The way the Prophet Muhammad is portrayed is humiliating, and the Muslims will stand up against it. I warned against it, and I explained it will hurt the feelings of the Muslims and Arabs in Israel.
A mere warning or an aggressive threat, enough to push political parties in the middle of the electoral campaign to react, starting with Israel Beitenu, the nationalist far-right party led by Avigdor Lieberman, the Israeli Minister of Foreign Affairs. The party members hastily organized a protest in front of a Stematsky bookstore at the heart of Tel Aviv.
We gathered here to say that we won't give in to terror and to threats of extremists here in Israel who belong to this united Arab list made up of Islamists, jihadists and communists. They threatened and said that if the last edition of Charlie Hebdo arrives here after the bloody attacks in Paris, they won't be responsible for the possible outcome.
For its part, Stematsky mentioned logistical problems as justification for the cancellation, but it still offers clients the possibility of buying the edition online on its website. The chain released the following statement as an official response.
Stematsky is devoted to freedom of expression in all forms. The chain has sold Charlie Hebdo for several years and will continue to do so. Stematsky has decided to distribute the issue in question via the website only, starting Monday at 5 p.m. The sale will remain open as long as inventory permits.
Joined in studio, as I mentioned, by Ashley Perry of Israel Beitenu. Ashley, I want to ask you this. When the, your new boss, when the Israeli foreign minister comes out and uses, I'm going to have to say it, and uses this as somewhat of a political capital, because it is political capital at this stage of the game, and to say go out there and buy and showing the pictures. Is this something necessary at this point when we think of what happened in Paris because of Charlie Hebdo? Because this is such a divisive matter, especially in the Middle East. Why even touch it?
Well, let me first correct you by saying he's not my new boss. I've worked with him for the last 6 years in the foreign ministry.
And I love being corrected. Yes.
But that aside, I think Israel Beitenu has proven itself to be a party of action. It's not just a party of words. It's not a party of slogans. Regardless of whether there are elections or whether we're in the middle of a parliamentary season, Israel Beitenu will act when it deems fit. And I think Salman Rushdie, the award-winning author who has been under a fatwa death sentence for, I think, decades now, said it best when he was asked, how do you defeat terrorism? He simply said, don't allow yourself to be terrorized. If every single threat of terror, of violence, allows us to prevents us from living our lives, prevents us from having liberty and freedom of speech in this country, then quite simply, what do we call ourselves a democracy? I think the most important...
I don't disagree, but I will remind you that Salman Rushdie had to live in hiding for the bulk of his life for stating what he stated, which he has the full right to, but the other side doesn't see it that way. And I'm not saying, I'm just wondering out loud with you at this point, when we look at Charlie Hebdo, and when there are demonstrations against the cover of the recent Charlie Hebdo newspaper edition, then, yes, we should not be terrorized, but isn't it just so sensitive that at this point it's almost like wagging a finger in somebody's face?
I would say two things to that. First of all, if we look at the front cover of the latest Charlie Hebdo, it is really, it's not gratuitous. It's simply depicting the Muslim prophet Muhammad with a sign saying, Je suis Charlie, I am Charlie. Now, I don't know about you, but I find nothing wrong in that, and I think that there should be nothing wrong in that. Yes, there have been gratuitously insulting cartoons around the world, as there are against Israel, the Jewish people, and the state of Israel, daily, if not hourly. We do not resort to violence, and because there's a public that resorts to violence, then it seems that we should limit our freedom just in one sector of the public. We should say, no, every single person should be held to the same standards, whether it's Jew, Christians, or Muslims. And I would say that the second thing is that, we saw those massive solidarity marches in Paris, and everyone around the world had, put as their Facebook status and held placards saying, Je suis Charlie. If we allow ourselves to prevent the subsequent edition of Charlie Hebdo to be sold in our newsstands, in our bookstores, then we are giving the terrorists a victory that they do not deserve, and we're saying to them that you have won. By massacring all those people in Charlie Hebdo and subsequently the Hypercaché, the Jewish kosher store, then we are saying you have won. By allowing our life to continue as normal, by allowing
valid points. But would this have been a cause célèbre? Would this have been, a cause célèbre if we weren't looking at 60 days before elections, which in many ways, this is also creating a headline, which is not that bad for Israel Beitenu, your boss of many years, of Hebdo Lieberman, who is not doing so well in the polls.
Well, first of all, I don't think you can judge too much by polls at this point. I remember in 2009 we were polling relatively similarly, and we received 15 mandates. A few weeks ago we were receiving 17 mandates. Now we're polling 8 or 9. So anything can change. We don't know what the issues are exactly. We don't know the list. The lists have not been handed in officially. We don't even know exactly which parties. So I wouldn't put too much into polls.
Isn't there no concern within Israel Beitenu? I mean, there was talk even that Mr. Lieberman was saying that if he sees that the party's not doing so well, that he himself will resign.
I never heard. I never heard him make such
behind-the-scenes chatter, supposedly of political correspondence. But that said, is there concern within the party at this stage when you're looking at the polls?
No, as I said, we're quietly optimistic because, as I said, in every single poll where Yisrael Beitenu or election Yisrael Beitenu has been involved in, the polls have shown us to be far lower than we actually get in the elections. So we are absolutely optimistic that we will again be able to be one of the leading parties in the next Knesset.
And I'm optimistic that I will have you back again in the studio.
I look forward to it.
No, as you should, because right now I'm locking you in. First of all, thank you for being with us today as we move to something slightly lighter. And don't worry, we still do news, which is the Web Review and the spiral viral that is Mr. Tony Grant, recently fresh off the plane in Athens, where he single-handedly created the shift in the political map.
Well,
yes.
I did, of course, but no one can shift the political spectrum as much as Sarah Palin.
No, nobody.
Yes,
nobody. Actually, don't worry. I mean, we don't do this to all politicians, but sit back and relax. Yes, Sarah Palin.
Well, we mentioned Sarah previously in our press review, and she did speak in Iowa over the weekend. But at one point, her prompter went dysfunctional. And we know that prompters, are great when they work, and when they don't work, they can trip one up.
Yes.
Yeah. But her sort of bizarre, unscripted rant has been sort of the talk of the internet because, she just she said a few things that, well, I'm going to quote.
Please go. Yeah.
Let's see. The man can only ride you when your back is bent. Unquote.
The man can only...
Yes, so that was one of the things I don't know what she was...
Ashley, never say that on
the
stage.
Yeah, never say that,
Whatever
Ashley.
you do.
Say other things. But a pantsuit can crush patriots. Yes, I mean... that was a reference to Hillary Clinton.
A pantsuit can crush... That's my bumper sticker.
Yeah.
Okay, and
again, that was
wow.
Oh gosh.
Wow, it's all that Dr. Pepper.
One thing that she did say, I liked her line about Obama saying of Obama. She said, "America, he's just not that into you." So that actually worked. But the thing about the pantsuit, I don't know.
No.
Wow.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, and she's.
I say always, block the prompter for that woman. I think we're going to have so many headlines coming out.
And we haven't seen the last of Sarah, so
entirely.
She's just warming up.
Yes.
Let's see. Whale poo-poo.
Of course.
Yes.
I'm trying to get Knesset ministers into the studio. Yes, turning white.
The whale punado has been the talk of the internet.
Whale punado.
Yes. Did you hear about that? Those divers off the coast of Dominica.
Oh, my Lord.
God, yes, whales, poo-poo too. Yes. The bigger the whale, the bigger the punado.
Wow.
Yes. So it was caught on film, and
that is terrible. That looks like live birth.
It is terrifying.
That is terrifying.
But it's in the water, so it's sort of self-purifying in a way.
For whom?
Let's see. I don't know. Sea life in general.
Sea life in general. Yes.
Speaking of back from the dead, so to speak, not that she ever really was, but she was always out there. Heather Mills is back in the news. Yes, Paul McCartney's ex. Yes, she uses her stump to pick up guys. And I quote, use my stump to pick up men.
No, I was about to say that's the most non-PC line you've ever said.
She said
I use my stump to pick up men.
Yes.
In what way? In how?
Well, if she sees a hot man, she knows she can have him, and she uses the stump to, you know what? She may or may not have a new reality TV show coming out that she's stumping for, could not resist.
I'm already thinking that you should actually release together Sarah Palin and Heather Mills. With the pantsuit and the stump.
And Sarah Netanyahu.
Oh, yes.
Then it would get really interesting.
Yes,
they'd have so much to discuss.
Please, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
They're keeping it interesting. Actually, Lena Dunham is keeping it interesting, too. Yes, she has slammed Puritan America at Sundance. Yes. She's someone that everyone's...
That tackles
Pervy, Woody Allen, Puritanical USA.
That's going to get a lot of ratings for girls. Yeah, that's going to really fly out there.
Yeah, but the good thing, actually relating to Charlie Hebdo... Yeah, she said that the boycott, censorship, shut-them-down approach to humor shows a very basic lack of understanding of what humor can do for us.
I tend to agree.
Smart things to say.
And an interesting figure, Lena Dunham, an interesting figure in the comedy scene in the United States.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yes. Watching her. American Sniper is still ruling at the box office. So if you haven't seen it yet, you're like the only one.
Like it's still ruling in white gun-holding America.
It's Sarah Palin's favorite. She's defended it, right and left on Facebook and online.
Commie Hollywood, yeah.
She slammed. She said, Hollywood lefties are screwing you over. That was when the prompter broke, something like that. She really keeps it interesting.
She keeps it interesting. No, definitely. I think that the headline would be, we'll go back to it in a second, but moving on, because I'm thinking the pantsuit line is one I have to use.
I love that one, Johnny Depp would look good in a pantsuit. Anything to make his movies do better at the box office.
Wow.
Because this new one, Mordecai?
Mordecai
is a bit of a dud. It's a bit of a dud.
Scores lowest wild release opening since 1999.
1999's Astronaut's Wife.
My God.
They're saying that he with his whole Jack Sparrow and that sort of motif of the sort of eccentric, he's too old for that now. That's what they're saying. That he needs to play more normal people. And
of his own age. I'm glad they should say that to men more.
They should.
Because usually we hear that only as women.
Yeah.
Seriously, I'm looking at Ashley as if it's his fault.
It's our fault.
Yeah, it's our fault. It's all our fault.
Yeah.
Yes.
Diane Wiest.
Oh.
Going broke. Yeah, she's having... Shouldn't laugh.
As do thespians
I'm having a hard time paying my bills,
Oscar
but so is
Diane
she.
Wiest can't pay her bills.
Yeah, she may have to move out of her Upper West Side apartment because she's having trouble paying those New York bills.
No.
And she won Oscars at Hannah and Her Sisters.
Hannah and Her Sisters is one of the best.
Hannah
and Her Sisters is one of the best movies ever. Which, by the way, I went to film school because of that movie. Let's talk about me for a little bit.
Let's talk about Hannah and Her Sisters.
And
Great
Her
movie.
Sister. Great. No,
that was before Woody Allen was pervy.
That's
allegedly pervy. Gotta protect
before the allegedly pervy thing, you definitely.
Yeah.
No, but I mean, it's these headlines that always make me, If Diane Wiest can't pay her bills, where does that put us?
Yes, we won't discuss on the air.
Discuss that.
Rihanna?
Yes, Rihanna, of course. Bring it back to
collaboration with Kanye West. Yeah, it's called For 5 Seconds. I mean, 4 5 seconds. Yeah, it just begs the question: do these people have to collaborate with everybody?
No, I mean, you just collaborate with Paul McCartney.
I think he's in on this collaboration too. But it's so much collaboration. Where's the singular artistic vocal voice these days?
No, I know.
Yeah, Madonna.
Kanye West, I don't know. But let's have a little. Give me one last line of Palin. What was the pantsuit?
Oh gosh. Let's see. She says the press asks, "Can anyone stop Hillary? A pantsuit can crush patriots."
Okay. A pantsuit can crush patriots will be the new theme line, definitely, of our show. That said, when we get back, something else completely different about sports where pantsuits don't crush anybody. Do stay with us, but first, of course, a little bit more of the morning headlines. Thank you. Good morning, I-24 News Morning Edition on this January 26, 2015, and a fabulous Monday morning at that, because I am joined by two fabulous men.
Am I fabulous men?
I'm trying to embarrass the new guy.
Fine, okay.
We'll manage. We'll manage. Moving on.
Okay, blushing to my right is Ron Friedman, but I'm going to start with the blonde guy. Don't forget.
Who's blushing as well?
Who's blushing as well. This is the day, this is the Monday, this is the day that Jonathan Regev, host of the sports magazine, Anything and Everything.
Yes, everything happening in sports. And we'll begin with China. Not exactly a winter sports destination. You wouldn't think of China as one. But when China puts its mind to something, they can do anything. We've already seen that in many...
Not only that, you know that my father used to say, I don't think that he even invented it. He's probably stole it from somebody, that the Chinese don't need to go to war. They just need to start walking.
Eventually they'll win. There's enough people to win anything.
Yeah.
There's enough people to host everything. We've seen that at the Beijing Olympics. Now, Beijing wants to become the first city in the world that will host Summer Olympics and Winter Olympics. Beijing is one of the final two candidates for the 2022 Games. The other is Almaty in Kazakhstan. But, yes.
Okay, no, we'll touch on that shortly. But we have a report.
This is the story first.
Okay, let's take a look.
China is not the first country people think of when talking about winter sports. But the Asian powerhouse is looking to change the minds of many with its most recent 2022 Winter Olympics bid. High on a barren mountainside, the Chinese ski jumpers hope to find glory in 2022. Hosting the Games would require a giant leap of its own, as the bitterly cold valley is home to the small town of Taizecheng. Beijing's bid document says it will be the site which would see 30 gold medals decided in the Nordic skiing events and become the base for a bustling Olympic village. But the country has few top-class facilities for outdoor events, little snow in the area, and even less of a tradition in winter sports. Only about 1 meter of snow falls annually in the mountains north of Beijing, and many believe the bid would be a mistake.
I think from the natural conditions point of view, this is definitely not the best place to have a big winter activity, at least for snow sport.
But officials have outlined a bold plan to carve world-class skiing facilities into desolate mountainsides and weave a bullet train system through the rugged terrain, a plan which is not so simple.
For some disciplines, you can't move mountains, or you can't excavate and add more earth from the other side just to create the condition.
In 6 months, the International Olympic Committee will make its decision. Beijing 2022 has emerged as the front runner in the race after a string of European cities pulled out, leaving them facing off only against the Kazakhstan city of Almaty. China has financial muscle and the kind of political support that only a one-party state can provide, and the public backing is overwhelming.
At Jiangikao, especially Genting resort, the climatic conditions are very good, as we have enough natural snow for the Winter Olympics competition.
And with problems seen in previous Olympics, they know they must be ready for any obstacles that come their way.
But to avoid the lack of snow, as happened in Vancouver in 2012, we need to get fully prepared.
If Beijing wins the bid, it will become the first city to host both the Summer and Winter Games, a special feat the country wishes to accomplish.
So, Jonathan, I'm going to start with the first question that comes to my mind, being a sports aficionado, knowing everything about this. Weather-wise,
yes.
Because what I know about China is you go there, you stop breathing. But would it be like, what's standing against them in getting this big?
Basically, it's not a winter sports destination. You'd think Canada, 2010, that works. Sochi, 2014. Sochi, by the way, is the hottest place in Russia, but there are mountains nearby.
Yeah, but the hottest place in Russia is like it's minus 5 degrees, right? Rather than minus 20.
It's like on the Black Sea, but there are mountains nearby. And plus, you think Russia, sports destination, it works. China, not so much. But then again, there's money, there's working force. They can build the infrastructure very fast, and I'm not hinting.
And there will be no dissent. Also, if somebody doesn't like, building in certain conditions, they'll just be put in jail.
Yeah, exactly. It's not as if they can protest against the government. Don't do that. Don't take away our natural resources. We'll take them away. Shut up.
Yeah,
it's basically that. And again, it's the IOC, the International Olympic Committee, making the decisions. I don't want to point anything against these institutions. FIFA is even worse. But money works there.
But I'm not pointing anything against you.
Money works in these institutions. FIFA is the worst. IOC has
fighting for this. I'm looking at the world ahead 2022. If they've had the Olympics there already, which were fabulous.
They were. We should hand that to the Chinese. They did a spectacular job.
Spectacular job. But this is again. I'm not talking world numbers, but it's prestige, right? What do they have to gain out of this?
Absolute prestige. China, up until 30 years ago, was not a major power in the world of sports. Up until the 1984 Olympics in Los Angeles. Then all of a sudden, the past 30 years, they have been winning everything. Of course, they topped the medal count in their home Olympics in 2008. They want to become a major force in everything. So they've already done that in the economy world. Now they want to conquer the sports world. Guess what? I think they'll do it. With a billion plus people, you'll do it eventually.
And then they'll start marching, as my father warned.
Yes,
but asking you now, when it comes to the people running up against them for 2022, I love this about the Olympics. They're the only people who can plan ahead. Things you can never do in the Middle East. But when you're looking at 2022, then it's who else is up against them? Kazakhstan.
Almaty, the capital of Kazakhstan.
Let's ponder that for a second. I'm going to the Olympics at what?
Almaty. I think the name was changed to Almaty recently. But
Which stands for no Jews. I'm still waiting for the new guy to blush.
Gives Borat the opportunity to do a sequel if necessary.
I like.
Borat, who spoke Hebrew most of that film, for those of you watching it. Yeah, but But Kazakhstan, asking, what did they have going for them? I'm horrible.
Standing up against China, against Beijing. You're in trouble. You're in trouble.
Exactly.
And plus you know that the Chinese would put a better job. I mean that's what happens when you have 1 billion plus people working for you. There's been no criticism whatsoever. China has been a growing power when it comes to winter sports, but they are the last man standing against the Chinese bid. There were a couple of other big cities.
Kazakhstan is the last man standing against the Chinese bid.
In this aspect, yes, there were other cities running for the 2022 games. They dropped. Now it's Almaty against Beijing. Come the end of July, we'll know what the decision is.
I'm almost rooting for Kazakhstan. I'm like, yeah, go.
Maybe that is what's going to work for them. Many people are saying,
yes,
of course. The people at I-24 News said, we feel sorry for Kazakhstan.
Think about it. If there are Olympics in Kazakhstan, first of all, you're looking immediately at a Borat sequel.
Of course.
You're looking at a Borat sequel. I like. Borat runs the Olympics. I'm liking it. But definitely, well, first of all, if you want to know anything and everything about, the Olympics from, we're 2015, 7 years from now, don't forget to watch the Sports Magazine today at
7:40 Jerusalem time, 6:40 Central European time. Actually, today it's Talking Football. Monday and Tuesday we have Talking Football. What do we have in Talking Football today?
What do we have in Talking Football?
Spain, Cristiano Ronaldo. What did he do? He punched another player. That's what Ballon d'Or, the best player in the world. What do you do when you don't play so good? You punch another player, of course.
Clearly a Messi guy here.
Yeah, that would never have happened in Barcelona.
No. Right? Never?
They only bite people.
Messi doesn't do those kind of things. But that's one thing. I mean, I don't like Ronaldo. I'm not in love with Messi either. But Ronaldo, he has this thing going for, I'm the man, and if I don't play good, I'm going to punch you out or something.
Listen, I mean, many would say that is the thing that sells the sport.
It does.
But that's on Talking Football today.
At 7:40 Jerusalem time, 6:40 Central European time. Talking Football tomorrow. FA Cup, crazy weekend. All the big teams lose. You're a Chelsea member, right?
I'm a Chelsea member.
They're out of the FA Cup.
I'm the president of the Chelsea club.
So, Mrs. President, Chelsea's out, Manchester City's out, Southampton is out, Manchester United, no draw against Cambridge United from the 4th division. Yes, we're seeing here Manchester City losing to Middlesbrough, 2nd division.
Oh, my goodness.
Ron understood that. I'm looking at this horrified. What is this? Wow, okay. They're wearing red.
The Reds scored against the...
And more power to the
kind
Reds.
of blue.
Yeah, for the kind of blue. That's something that we hear very much like.
That's Manchester City. They lost at home for the 2nd week coming.
Wow. Okay, well, Talking Football tonight, and of course, Jonathan Regev locked in studio. As we move to the most important bit of the day.
Of course it is.
Ron Friedman, editor at large, but also
Good morning.
Good morning. Tech gadget I have no idea where I have my sunglasses with me. But yes, yeah. What do we have in the tech corner?
All right, so I'm going to show you some videos, some new products that are coming out on in the world that have me salivating a bit. I don't know if you know this about me, but I'm a bit of a science fiction fan.
You are, and when you say salivating, because you're Canadian, and Canadian enthusiasm with you is like, I'm very excited.
I won't be dancing on the table, but
yes.
I do want to show you a few clips. So the first one up, it's Microsoft. You know this company, you might have heard of it.
No, Microsoft rings a bell. Okay.
On Wednesday, they unveiled a brand new product, and magically they've been able to keep it secret for a long time, but it's really futuristic looking. It's their answer to Google Glass. It's called HoloLens. Let's take a little look and
let's take a look. HoloLens.
And be astounded.
Yes, please. HoloLens.
But what if we could go further? What if we could go beyond the screen? Where your digital world is blended with your real world. Now we can. This is the world with holograms. What will they enable us to do? New ways to visualize our work.
I have an idea for the fuel tank.
New ways to share ideas with each other.
How are things going your end?
I just put the images in OneDrive.
Perfect.
More immersive ways to play. New ways to teach and learn.
So put the new trap in the place of the old one.
Now what?
And tighten here and here.
New ways to collaborate and explore the places we've never been.
Look at this formation. Let's take a closer look.
Wow. I want to tell you, Ron, though, that I didn't understand why I brought my
There we
glasses with me.
go. I don't know if they have that model yet, but you're on the right track.
This is my futuristic circa Jackie Kennedy.
So that video, first of all, courtesy of Microsoft, and as you can see, I mean, it's pretty incredible.
It's incredible. Even Jonathan Ragiv here was going, oh!
I'm amazed.
What's it called? It's a
It's a HoloLens, lens. But it takes me back. I mean, I grew up watching Star Trek: The Next Generation, where they had the holodeck, which was incredible, and we all want to be in that world.
Yeah.
And this doesn't provide that. I mean, it's not three-dimensional objects that you're going to actually see. You have to have the lenses on.
You have to have the lens, and I'm looking at the promo, which looks fabulous, and and you gasp, but who? It's for people who build motorcycles in the middle of their living room.
There's tons of applications. I mean, you can just imagine what you can use it for. I mean, this is for training purposes, doctors, pilots, simulators, stuff like that. It immerses you in the real world. Art and design, like we saw the person with the motorcycle.
But it's more case specific for people who actually can use it for their trade, rather than I'm looking at Google Glass and the whole idea of wearable technology that failed because people look like idiots.
Yeah.
Okay. There's that, right? And
but this is taking it a step further. If Google Glass kind of gave you your smartphone monitor in your glasses, this actually adds layers, three-dimensional layers to the world around you. And you can just imagine. I mean, if this is going to be open source, so smaller companies are going to be developing apps for this.
Right.
Big news.
It's open source. It doesn't cost money.
And for gaming, it also takes the place of Oculus Rift. Maybe
in a non-Canadian kind of way. I'm excited.
So you should be dancing.
Yes. Now.
Next up, we've got a hardware gadget, Leatherman. The traditional tool manufacturers. They're coming up with a new type of project. Said the idea came when the founder of Leatherman was on a trip to Disneyland. He was stopped by security because he had his Leatherman with him. They put it.
We have very little time.
Right,
I want to see this clip. Let's take a look.
Clip.
Introducing Tread, the first multi-tool that lets you be the one who gets it done, anywhere. Tread is 25 hard-working tools you wear on your wrist, including Phillips and flathead screwdrivers, hex and box wrenches, even a cutting hook and a bottle opener. So regardless of the job, the right tool is always at hand. Tread features 11 interchangeable links, each crafted from injection-molded 17-4 stainless steel. There's an optional Swiss-made timepiece, water-resistant to 200 meters.
Dude.
Yeah.
Wearable hardware. I love you. You just got me the present for my husband.
There we go. Yeah, he's not getting. Well, spoiler: he's not getting a PlayStation.
He's not getting his PlayStation. Exactly. He's getting that.
No,
open
it's
beer
cool.
bottles.
It's we were talking about wearable technology, glasses, stuff like that. This is hardware. This wearable.
This is stuff you can use.
Yeah.
Okay. And
we have time for the last
really,
one. All right. So
one,
for the housekeeper, let's say clip Dolphy. It's a new gadget you can stick in your sink.
Housekeeper for the housekeeper. Okay, hopelessly spoiled.
It's a little gadget you put in your sink and it turns everything into a washing machine. It uses ultrasonic technology, clears out the dirt.
That's all the time we have. But with this, technology for the men staying at home to wash to wash the laundry, that's all the time we have. Don't forget to check us out on the web, Facebook, Twitter, all those social networks. Of course, tune in tomorrow morning for another edition of the Morning Edition, a place you should be, because that's where you get to meet really gorgeous men. There, I said it. I was Yael Avi. Yeah, that was the day that was. Thank you. מעולה. אנחנו נשאיר את המשקפיים.